Greetings, everyone. At long last, C.O.P.S continues on DVD. I'm actually holding Volume 2 in my hand. Like, I can touch it, I can feel it, it's real. I can put the discs in and watch them and have more C.O.P.S to watch. This is something I didn't think was ever going to happen. But it's happening! And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Multimedia Chronicles. So then that brings us to the long-awaited Volume 2. Well, here's a better look at the front cover. Volume 2. Some of you may not have even known this was out. Why? Because it's not available in stores. No, Shout Factory has actually started a new program which they call the Direct-to-Consumer, or DTC program for short, which basically means they're able to produce sets and distribute them directly through the Shout Factory website and select Amazon and eBay sellers without having all the cost of distribution. So that means that shows like C.O.P.S, which may not have gotten stellar sales numbers in the retail market, can actually be brought out on DVD now and hopefully completed through this direct-to-consumer program because their costs aren't as high. So what are some of the ways in which they've cut costs? Well, they've cut costs in distribution, and they've obviously cut costs in packaging. So this one is, of course, a nice cardboard case with gatefold roadmap style thing. Volume 2 is actually just a standard, they call it a Vivipack, or keep case essentially, with just the discs inside. So this one's a 3-disc set. The other one's, of course, a 4-disc set. Volume 2 has another 21 episodes on it. Okay, so here's the front cover, which you already saw. Here's the back cover, and you can see just gives you a few more screenshots and a nice little description. Now, something else I should mention is another way they basically cut costs, and I can totally understand why they do this. Normally I don't like it when sets do this because I find it kind of cheap, but given the product, like the means by which this particular product was brought to us, I don't really mind because I totally understand why they did that, and it was specifically to cut costs. And that is putting the episode listings on the inside of the cover. So if we take a look at the episode listings, see the previous one had it printed on the actual package. It was a little better, but this one you've actually got to take out the third disc in order to read the contents of the third disc. But given that you'd probably be watching the third disc, I guess that's not so bad. But anyway, let's take a look at the, I'll just fill the screen again with the picture. Let's take a look at the contents of the discs here. As I say, this is bare bones. It's got no extras this time. Talking to Brian Ward a little bit over on the Shout Factory message boards, apparently there are a few more extras that he's looking to include should the set be completed, but he has to look into rights issues and things like that to see if they can actually be included. So we've got Disc 1, the case of the big frame-up, the case of the sinister spa, the case of the cool caveman. Interesting story with that. Case of the cool caveman. The actual episode title is Case of the Cold Caveman, so slight discrepancy there, whatever. The case of the wayward whiz kid, the case of the stashed cash. Interesting personal note, the case of the stashed cash is the one and only episode that I've actually had on tape all these years, recorded way back when it originally aired. So I'm intimately familiar with that episode of C.O.P.S. Yes, it's the only one I had to watch over and over again for years. Then you got the case of the Big Boss's Master Plan, parts 1 and 2. And then Disc 2, you got the case of the Criminal Games, the case of the Iceberg Pirates, the case of the Giveaway Gold, the case of the Big Little Green Men, the case of Mace's Romance. I have to mention something about the case of Mace's Romance. You remember, those of you who have been watching for a while, you remember my Jason the Wheeled Warriors DVD review where I was talking about episode 5, I think it was, the episode called Ghost Ship on that set, and how the audio mix was messed up? Well, the exact same problem occurs with this particular episode, the case of Mace's Romance. Now, for me personally, I have all the sound going through an audio mixer so I can actually phase things left and right for my own personal enjoyment, but not everybody has that luxury. In fact, I'm willing to wager very few of you do. Here's what the problem is. Now, C.O.P.S is a mono show to begin with. The audio is monaural, it's not stereo. So this shouldn't even be an issue. The same thing goes for Jason the Wheeled Warriors. I mean, it should just be the same sound coming out of all the speakers, ideally, right? I don't know, sounds like breaking glass out there. So what the issue is in the case of Mace's Romance, all the dialogue is pushed over to the left speaker, and then the music and sound effects is in all the other speakers. So it's very distracting, and it's actually very hard to hear the voices in that episode. Again, talking with Brian Ward and following some of the discussion on the Shout Factory message boards, this was brought to his attention, and he said the problem exists on the actual master tapes, and there was nothing they could do with it. But here's my issue with that, is I'm no stranger to encoding and remixing and stuff myself. I do a lot of that with my own videos and whatnot. How hard is it to just make an audio file of the sound and remix it for mono? I mean, come on. That could have been easily fixed. Especially given that it's an issue that you've seen before with previous, things. I mean, it's not difficult to rip the audio or make a separate audio track, take it into an audio editor, remix it for mono, drop the levels a bit, and then put it back into the finished product. I mean, it's an error that's easily fixable. And normally I'll forgive small errors, but in this case, it's an error that could have been fixed. I mean, there is no question that it could have been fixed and fixed easily. So, shame on you! Shame on you for not fixing it. If you ever have any questions about how to fix stuff like that, call me, because I know how to do that, okay? Alright, anyway, that small quibble aside, the rest of the set is fine. That's the only error that I saw in the entire set. Following that, we have another, actually, Disc 2 is like the case of interesting things. So Disc 2, we have the case of the crime nobody heard, which, incidentally, is known by another title. Specifically, it's known as the case of the boy nobody wanted. Now this again is part of the discussion over on the Shout Factory message board. There's been some dispute for some time as to how many episodes of C.O.P.S there actually are. Now, in my previous video I said the general consensus seemed to conclude that there was 66. This is in fact incorrect. There's actually 65, which makes more sense because, as I've said on other occasions, 65 is the standard syndication number for 80s cartoons. Why? Because everything runs on a 13-week cycle. So 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, divided into 65 episodes means you can show a different episode every day for 13 weeks. And then with a full season being 52 weeks, that means every episode can be shown 4 times. So 65 episodes is the standard for these types of shows most of the time. So in the case of C.O.P.S, fans were insisting there were 66 episodes, but where the confusion arose was because this particular episode had its title changed, I guess, shortly before it went to air. So some of the episode guides that showed up later had both of them listed as separate episodes. However, they are in fact the same episode, and if you actually watch the episode, it makes perfect sense. Both titles fit the episode perfectly. I think the general thinking on that is that they changed the title from The Boy Nobody Wanted to The Case Nobody Heard, simply because it sounds a little less harsh than The Boy Nobody Wanted, Puts kind of a negative spin on it, doesn't it? But having it called the case of the crime nobody heard actually makes perfect sense as well, and almost fits a little bit better because it's about, without giving too much of the plot away, it's about a deaf boy who actually witnesses the crooks committing a crime. So the crooks are out to get him because they think he overheard them, when in fact he didn't hear a thing. He saw them, but he didn't hear them. So the cops are protecting him while they're trying to track down the crooks and find out what he knows. So, yeah. So interesting bit of trivia there that's eluded C.O.P.S fans for years. For years, we all thought there was 66 episodes, but there's actually 65. So, sorry! Which explains why there's 21 episodes on this set, and then presumably there will be 22 on Volume 3, should we ever get it. So, finally on Disc 2, we have the case of the bogus bride. And then finally on Disc 3, we've got the case of the visiting mother. Oh, that episode is so hilarious. Big Boss's mother comes to town, and she thinks that he's a big philanthropist and gives away money all the time. So she's like dragging him around town and making him give away money, and he's just like wanting to shoot himself the whole time. It's just a hilarious episode. Then the case of the ghost crooks, the case of the lying lie detector, the case of the disappearing doe, the case of Muckluck's luck, The Case of the Baby Bad Guy's Return. And I noticed the baby bad guy seemed to dye his hair while he was in the Slammer. He's blonde in that one, whereas he had dark hair in his first appearance. Go figure. And finally, The Case of the Rock and Roll Robbers, where Dr. Bad Vibes, Rock Crusher, and Berserko form a rock band. Please, Brian, don't let Dr. Bad Vibes Rock Band be the last episode of C.O.P.S we ever see on DVD. I don't want that to be my final memory of C.O.P.S. Okay, so for now, we're all waiting with bated breath to find out how the Direct-to-Consumer Volume 2 does, to see if we get a Volume 3, because we just need one more volume now. We're so close! We have 43 of the 65 episodes, which is so much better than only having 22, but not quite as good as having all 65. So in terms of the picture and sound quality, I went into this a fair amount in the previous video. The same applies to Volume 2. There is a bit of dust, dirt, and debris, just, you know, as the nature of the beast. I did notice a little bit more Tellison-y wobble in a couple of episodes. It wasn't too bad in most of them, but one of them in particular, I can't remember which specific episode it was, because I watched all 43 in 2 days. They're all kind of smushed together into one gigantic episode. Yeah, there was one episode in particular, it seemed to really be wobbling severely, but I mean, that's something you can't really fix other than having access to the original film and retransferring it. So I don't blame Shout Factory for that at all. I mean, that's just the nature of 80s film transfer technology. Yeah, and other than like dust, debris, and dirt, which is to be expected from cartoons of that era because they were done with cells, it's fine. There's really no big deal there at all. And again, in terms of bit rate, once again, Shout Factory tops out the bit rate as high as they possibly can. Volume 1 tends to hover around 7,000 kilobits per 7,000 kilobits per second. Volume 2 is much the same. So you can expect the same level of quality from both volumes, and they look great. They look absolutely great. And sound, with the exception of that one episode which had a faulty mix, sound is loud, clear, crisp, and clean throughout, and I had no complaints whatsoever. I was actually watching it. I have sort of a faux surround sound system. It's basically 5 speakers, 2 fronts and a center, subwoofer, and 2 rears, but it's basically just stereo and stereo. It's not, so it surrounds me with sound, but it's just surrounding me with stereo. Yeah, I need to get a proper receiver so I can actually enjoy things properly. But as I said anyway, C.O.P.S is a mono show anyway, but just in terms of the oomph of it, it was great. I always made sure to crank the theme song, much to the annoyance of my neighbors, I'm sure. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say about the DVDs, but I do have a few other things I wanted to throw in there that are kind of related, but we're going to save those for next time. So part 3 of the DVD talking aboutedness. Alright, so until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.